we are going to talk about research, specifically public-facing research, and how we prepare ourselves to begin the application process in pursuit of a job of a specific company. So, right off the bat, this is one of the many areas that most people think is obvious and is quite simple that I think a lot of people miss. The very first step here in doing research and learning about the company, a lot of people do it through the wrong lens, or they do it with the wrong goal in mind. If you're going after a sales job and you're pursuing a SDR, BDR, account executive, some sort of sales, customer-facing role, you should be thinking of this in terms of what is the information that I need to know to prepare myself for the interview and for the job. And that might sound obvious, but I'm going to break it down here in a little bit. So for the interview, what are some of the questions I'm pretty sure they're going to ask me? And how can I go start doing public-facing research to get answers to those questions? And then for the role, one of the frames I like to tell people is, imagine that next week you have a customer meeting for this role. You got the job, you got it, you're in. And you have a customer meeting next week, just you and the customer. No one else from the company is going to be on the call with you, it's just you. And you have this week to do the research required to present yourself well, present the company well, and make sure you don't sound like a bumbling idiot on that call. How does that change the way you do your research? It should make it to where you're now narrowly focused on understanding what the customer might be struggling with and what the customer might care about, what they might want to talk about, and then you being prepared to have that type of discussion. So, research is important. Most people go to a company website and they'll go to the about page, they'll maybe go to the products or the services, they'll maybe read a few customer testimonials. And ultimately, those aren't necessarily bad things. Those are great things to read and become familiar with. The problem is when you actually get to an interview, aka the test. Did you do your research? Did you do your homework? And they start asking you very specific questions on, tell me about what we do. Why are we good? Why do you think you're a good fit for this role? The research you did isn't specific enough to help you in those environments, in those situations. So, the frame I want to give you when doing public-facing research is this. There's a few questions you should be asking yourself, and these questions are what you should be looking to get answers to as you do your research. All right? Question number 1. What is the problem this company solves? Right? Why do they exist? Right? What do they do? Why do they exist? Be able to explain it, be able to have a discussion on it, right? What this means, though, is that more than likely you're going to have to go more than one layer deep. To answer the question and say, maybe it's a cybersecurity company. Oh, this company develops firewalls or creates firewalls and deploys them to customers. Cool, that's layer 1. That's what they do, sure. Why do they do that? Why are they good at it? Why do customers love them? What differentiates them in the market? Is it their sales cycle? Is it the product itself? Is it how fast they can deploy? Is it how reliable it is? Is it maybe the combination of a few factors like reliability and price? The value's great. Understanding why a company exists, why they're good, what problem they actually solve, getting the details of those questions and answers is going to help you understand not just the company and what they do, but your job as a salesperson. Because those are the types of discussions you're going to be having every single day as a salesperson. It's going to revolve around the major problems you help your customers solve. So what better time to get familiar with those than now when you're starting your research, okay? So why does the company exist? What problem do they solve for their customers? How does that problem arise? Where does it come from? Typically, is it a big problem for companies? Is it something that they can kind of deal with and get by with just like not taking care of this problem, whatever it might be? Is it compliance related? Is it the type of problem where if they don't do it, they could get in trouble, right? By regulators, there's some sort of industry regulation that requires that they do this thing or that thing. And if they don't do it, they can get in trouble. Understand why the problem exists, where it comes from, typically, why it comes from where it comes from, the impact of the problem. Typically, how long does this problem linger before people do something about it? Who cares about this problem at the company? Is this a problem that marketing typically cares about, or HR, or engineering, or sales, or operations, or leadership? And if these people care, whoever you find out cares about it, is it just them? Is it a combination of these people? Sometimes there's organizations out there, tech companies that solve problems across all lines of business. So who cares about the problems that this company solves? Finally, I would say, as you're doing research on the company, understand that ultimately you have to have a conversation on this. That's essentially what an interview is you have to be able to answer some questions, and you should be prepared for curveball questions as it relates to these things. You should be prepared to think creatively and step outside the box a little bit in the interview. And we're going to talk about that later on how to prepare yourself for those situations. But it starts here. It starts with the research you do and the depth and breadth of research you do. Okay? So this part is very important. Some other questions to consider. When they do win business, why do they win? And when they lose, why do they lose? And typically, who do they lose to? And try to also understand how they compete against the status quo. Almost every organization out there competes against the status quo when you're selling, which is to say it's easier to do nothing. It's easier to just maintain what we're doing, not embark on this journey of change, okay? The status quo, who are your other competitors? When you lose to them, why do you typically lose? And then what is your status in the market? Where do you guys sit? Where does this company sit in the market? Are they the most expensive? Are they the cheapest? Are they somewhere in the middle? Are they revered as the most valuable, the most reliable? Are they the best? Or are they somewhere in the middle? Or are they down the bottom? Are they trending in any certain direction? Are they trending towards being better than they were last quarter or last year? Or are they trending towards being worse than they were last quarter or last year? There's all kinds of public information, public knowledge, public articles where you can start to get some insights on this stuff. The idea here is if you can't have a conversation about this, I would argue you might not be ready to step into a networking call, let alone an interview. Because in the networking calls, that's where you're going to start to begin to maybe ask some favors, and you're certainly going to leave some impressions. And so in your networking calls, while a lot of people see this as very informal and it's not an interview, correct? They're not interviews when you're reaching out to future peers or other people that you might be working with at the company, but they are evaluating you. Because eventually someone might ask them, a hiring manager, hey, did you ever talk to Andrew? How was he? From your perspective, what was that conversation like? Could you see him on your team? And so you want to make sure you're presenting yourself well in networking calls. So the research phase is first. Make sure that we can have a conversation about some of the questions that we're asking ourselves around the company. The other aspect of public-facing research is we want to start to understand the nuances and the details of the role. There's different types of sales roles, and it's important you understand this particular role. And more than likely, you can go off and learn quite a bit about it from a public-facing research perspective. So there's a few different roles. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I'll go over maybe the large buckets. There's your SDR, BDR role, typically people that are out there setting meetings, and they could be setting meetings from inbound leads or doing outbound. Outbound is where you're reaching out to people, you're cold calling, you're emailing, you're sending messages. Inbound is where people are probably filling out some sort of a form on your website and you're collecting these inbound leads and responding to them, either calling them back or emailing them and getting them on the phone. So these are SDRs and BDRs. They're setting appointments, and they're setting appointments typically for salespeople, account executives. In the account executive umbrella or world, there's all kinds of types. There's inside, there's outside, there's junior, there's senior, there's strategic, there's named, on and on. Know this. As an account executive, your main job now is you are responsible for the full sales cycle, all the way from open, all the way to close, right? Depending on how junior or senior you are, you might be responsible for bigger clients, smaller clients, bigger opportunities and deals, smaller opportunities and deals. That can all vary, but largely, as an account executive, as a salesperson, the biggest thing that changes if you go from BDR and SDR to account executive is now you're responsible for the entire sales process. You now have a quota to close business, generate revenue. Okay. Both of these roles have similarities and differences. They both carry quotas. They both have some sort of pressure on them to perform. They're both team oriented, and both of them require discipline. Both of them require having a strategic plan and being able to execute. They require communication skills. They require grit. They require initiative. So there's a lot of things that both of these roles require. I would argue the SDR and BDR role is going to really teach you some of the foundational sales skills, which is being able to get a stranger to agree to meet with you. If we're going to be sales professionals, ultimately what we're trying to do is get strangers to become customers. Get a stranger, someone you don't know, someone who has no idea who you are, what you're offering, and get them to come all the way over here to buy something from you and trust you and buy something from you again and again and again. And they were a stranger before. So how do you do that? First, we got to get them to just agree to meet with us. And that's what BDRs and SDRs master, that skill. They get strangers to agree to take time out of their day and meet with us. It's very hard, but it's a valuable skill. And it is a skill. There's some people that do it consistently better than others. Okay? So learn that skill. Once you learn that skill, you're going to graduate to become an account executive. And in the account executive world now, you're still largely responsible for getting people that don't know you or no idea who your company is or what you're offering. You still have to set meetings yourself. Most account executives out there are not free from setting meetings. You still have to reach out to strangers as an account executive yourself. You just also have help from a BDR if you even have a BDR. Okay? So now you're responsible for taking them to not just the first meeting, but all the way to close. And then eventually, after the deal closes and delivery begins, you typically hand them off to a project management team or delivery team or customer success. You're still involved, but just not nearly as much. Okay? The best way to describe a day in the life of what it's actually like to be an account executive is just to walk through the sales process. Okay? So we typically start with account planning, territory planning. You're assigned a territory and you assess the territory. What are all the companies, all the accounts that I have? We start to prioritize and ultimately filter out the ones that I'm going to focus on versus the ones I'm not. We then have a list of accounts from our territory that we're going to focus on, and accounts are nothing more than companies. And we begin to focus on these. And what we do with these now is we take even more scrutiny and we zoom in even further on just a few, if not one or two, and we open those accounts up and we say, who are the people in these accounts that I should be reaching out to? And what is the message I should be using to reach out to them? What is compelling, right? How should I reach out? How often? When? Through what medium? And so we answer all these questions in territory and account planning. And then next is prospecting or business development. This is where we actually do the plan. Planning, phase 1, step 1. Step 2, execute. Pick up the phone, call a stranger, reach out to people, email, message, so on and so forth. And then we're going to get meetings. Once we get a meeting, technically the discovery phase begins. The discovery phase is we're asking questions, we're learning as much as possible about our prospect or client, and they're learning about us. I like to call it mutual discovery. We're both learning about each other, and ultimately what we're trying to do as quickly as possible, especially at the early stages of our relationship, is figure out, is this worth our time? Should we be meeting? Should we be talking? Do you have a problem that I can solve? And do you believe that I can solve it? And do I believe that I can solve it? If yes, that's typically the first gate. That does not mean we have a deal by any stretch, but it's typically the first gate that says, okay, it's worth our time to at least explore this further. Okay. So from there, we typically go maybe through a demo phase or a proof of concept phase. We show them, and then we prove it to them, and then we negotiate terms. Ultimately, we'll come to an agreement after we present them with a proposal. They see the proposal, we might negotiate a little bit more. Ultimately, they sign the proposal, which is to say, like, we're going to buy this, sign on the dotted line. We then go through an implementation or delivery phase. And then after that, it's working, it's installed, whatever it is, they're using the thing, and renewals start to appear. Okay. And so this is the life of a salesperson. At any given time, you're in one of these phases doing one of these things. Okay. So people always ask, what's a day in the life? It's that. Go study the sales process, and at any given time, you should be in one of those phases with one of your customers.